I've wanted to interview Bob Dylan. His songs of protest and turmoil spoke to an entire generation. While his life has been the subject of endless
living legend, Bob Dylan is an iconic maestro whose melodies have reverberated globally. Of the music business, yet beneath all the glamour and glitz of being a high-profile celebrity, a lot of personal triumphs and tribulations have marred his life over the past 8 decades. He leaves behind a well-established legacy as a musical legend and a life tinged with sorrow today. Additionally, Bob Dylan is now able to appreciate happiness when he finds it because of the loss. Join us as we explore his artistic genius. He is beyond 83, and his way of life is sad. Personal difficulties and the long-lasting effect of his life. Prior to delving into specifics on Bob Dylan's romantic life and relationships, let's take a brief look at his early years and professional background. Born on May 24, Bob Dylan was originally named Robert Allen Zimmerman. He was born in Hibbing, Minnesota, and died in 1941 at St. Mary's Hospital in Duluth, Minnesota. Dylan's paternal grandparents, located west of Lake Superior on the Mesabi Range, Zygmunt Zimmerman and Anna Kyrgyz immigrated to the U.S. from Odessa in the Russian Empire, today Odessa, Ukraine, in response to the 1905 pogroms, anti-Jewish attacks. However, in 1902, his maternal grandparents, Ben Stone and Florence Stone, arrived in the United States as Lithuanian Jews. As said by Dylan, it is possible to trace his maternal grandmother's lineage back to the Kars province's Kagizan district, northeastern Turkey. Abram Zimmerman and Beatrice, Beatty, Stone, Dylan's parents, the family believed that the Jewish community was small and tightly knit. Duluth until Dylan was 6 years old, however his father developed polio. As a result, they moved back to Hibbing, his mother's hometown, where they stayed throughout Dylan's childhood. During this time, Dylan's father and over the course of his formative years, Dylan established a furniture and appliance store. Fondness for radio, starting with Shreveport's blues and country music stations, Louisiana. His musical taste shifted toward rock and roll as he approached adolescence. While attending Hibbing High School, Dylan formed a number of musical ensembles. The Golden Chords, one of these bands, specialized in covering songs by well-known artists including the performance of Rock and Roll Is Here by Danny and the Juniors by Richard and Elvis Presley. The principal had to cut the microphone because the school talent show was so loud. In 1959, Dylan was listed in his high school yearbook as Robert Zimmerman, T.O. joined Little Richard. In the same year, he performed twice with Bobby V under the name Elston Gunn, where he gave clapping accompaniment and played the piano. In September 1959, while residing in Minneapolis, Dylan relocated to attend the University of Minnesota. At the 10 o'clock school, Dylan started performing at the Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity house. He opened a coffee shop close to the campus and got involved in the local folk music scene in Dinkytown. As he discussed in a 1985 interview, his interests shifted from rock and roll to American folk music. Rock and roll, despite its catchy phrases, lacked depth and seriousness in my opinion, and energetic rhythms. Upon investigating folk music, it became clear that the songs did not accurately depict real life. I thought the music was more grounded and sincere. Folk songs frequently expressed depressing emotions, during this particular time, feelings of sadness, triumph, faith in the supernatural, and other intense emotions. During this period, the person started using the name Bob Dylan to identify himself. He stated in his autobiography that he considered adopting the surname Dylan until he came across Dylan Thomas's poetry, at which point he made the decision to change the spelling of his given name. In 2004, he provided justification for his decision to change his name. During the interview, it was stated that people are occasionally born into circumstances with wrong parents and names, and that they have the right to select their own identity. After completing his first year in college, Dylan made the decision to stop in May 1960. He set out to showcase political talents in New York City by January 1961. To visit Woody Guthrie, his musical inspiration, who was battling a serious at Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital, Guthrie was diagnosed with Huntington's disease. Influenced Dylan's early performances and had a significant impact on his artistic development. In order to convey the impact that Guthrie had on him, Dylan stated, "The songs themselves had the I said. He was the authentic voice of the American spirit. Infinite sweep of humanity in them. I had promised myself that I would be Guthrie's greatest disciple." While he was in the hospital, in addition to seeing Guthrie, Dylan became close friends with Guthrie's protege, Jack Elliott. Beginning in February 1961, Dylan gave performances at a number of clubs in Greenwich Village. He formed relationships with folk singers such as Dave Van Ronk, Fred Neil, Irish musicians, Tommy Makem, the Clancy Brothers, and Odetta, the New Lost City Ramblers. In September, Robert Shelton, a critic for the New York Times, praised Dylan's performance at Gerd's Folk City, marking a turning point in his career. B.O.B. Dylan, a distinctive folk song stylist, is a very positive review. Additionally, Dylan showcased his harmony abilities on folk singer Carolyn Hester's song during this month. Producer John Hamilton took notice of the third album and signed Dylan as a result. On March 19, 1962, Dylan's debut album, titled Bob Dylan, was released by Columbia Records. It included with just 2 original compositions and a blend of traditional folk, blues, and gospel songs. Talkin' New York, and the Song to Woody. Despite its initial lackluster performance, the album was able to break even financially. It sold 5,000 copies in its first year. The key choices he made. Keep watching to learn more about these decisions that helped him improve in every aspect during his career. In August 1962, Dylan's journey to fame began. He changed his name to Bob Dylan and signed a management contract with until 1970. Anderson was managed by Albert Grossman, who was well known for his confrontational tension between Grossman and John. Dylan's comparison of Grossman to Colonel Tom Parker Wilson and Hamilton collaborated to produce a number of tracks for Dylan's second album without official credit. Wilson proceeded to create the subsequent 3 albums that Dylan recorded. In December 1962, Dylan traveled to the UK to sing in a television program directed by Philip Saville. The end. Blowin' in the Wind. Dylan performed at folk clubs in London and got information from the freewheeling Bob Dylan. Dylan's second album was released in May and featured UK musicians such as Martin Carthy. Demonstrated his abilities as a singer-songwriter in 1963. Oxford Town is one of the many songs on the album. And Blowin' in the Wind were influenced by the passion for topical songs of Guthrie and Seeger. Social and political norms were challenged by the album's lyrics. Blowin' in the Wind became a hit song for Peter after drawing inspiration from a traditional slave song. Paul and Mary, based on a folk ballad, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, gained prominence. Both songs marked a new direction in Dylan's songwriting during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Dylan's topical songs helped him become more than just a songwriter by blending imagery with traditional folk elements. The songs that Janet Maslin sang in Freewheeling were related to young Americans who were worried about civil rights and nuclear disarmament. The album also had surreal and love songs. Talking Blues. Listeners were impressed by Dylan's humor and originality. George Harrison described the album as incredibly original and wonderful, including the Beatles. Opinions were divided by Dylan's raw singing style. His voice was described as youthful by Joyce Carol Oates, and unpolished but captivating. Dylan's songs were popularized by artists like Joan Baez. During the early 1960s, they were covered by other musicians who were successful with among Dylan's songs from that era were The Byrds, Sonny and Cher, The Hollies, and The Turtles. Recorded during the first single Dylan released, Mixed Up Confusion, released in December 1962. Freewheeling sessions with a backing band, was swiftly withdrawn. In contrast to the album's mostly solo acoustic tracks, the singles showed a readiness to a glimpse into a folk, Cameron Crowe's experiment with a rockabilly sound. The artist's thoughts shift to Sun Records and Elvis Presley. Bob Dylan's album, Another Side of the Mood of Bob Dylan, which was recorded in a single evening on June 9, 1964, was lighter. The songs Motorcycle Nightmare and I Shall Be Free No. 10 demonstrated Dylan's sense of humor, while Black Crow Blues was a love ballad, Spanish Harlem Incident and To Ramona were love songs. Hinted at the rock and roll I Don't Believe You, She Acts Like We've Never Meted, that would soon play a significant role in Dylan's songs. Seeing It Ain't Me Babe, as a rejection of the political role had been implemented in him. Chimes of Freedom comprises 2 lengthy songs. Moreover, My Back Pages marked Dylan's shift in focus and critique of his earlier work. Dylan switched from folk to folk rock pop in 1964, and he adopted a Carnaby Street look. Dylan wears colorful shirts, beetle boots, and sunglasses for fashion. Reporters remarked on his wild hair and loud skirts, and Dylan started responding with playful remarks. And during interviews, he made fun of a cowboy horror film on television and stated that he would play his mother in the movie. Dylan released the album Bringing It All Home in late March 1965. It marked the beginning of his recordings using Tom Wilson's electric instruments. Chuck Berry impacted the first single, Subterranean Homesick Blues, and it has been noted it is seen as a precursor to rap because of its free association lyrics that are reminiscent of beat poetry. Hip-hop. During Dylan's 1965 tour of Great Britain, the song was accompanied by an early music video. Instead of lip-syncing, Britain, as featured in the documentary Don't Look Back by D.A. Pennebaker, by dropping cue cards containing keywords from the song, Dylan imaginatively illustrated the lyrics. A technique known as Song on the Ground has been used in several music videos and advertisements ever since. Dylan played 4 long songs on the second side of Bringing Everything Home. The Byrds' electric rendition of Mr. Tambourine Man peaked at number 1 with an acoustic guitar and harmony. In the UK and the US, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, with It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, said Dylan's important compositions. In 1965, Bob Dylan performed at the Newport Folk Festival. Al Cooper on organ and Mike Bloomfield on guitar completed the first electric set. After performing at Newport in 1963 and 1964, Dylan encountered both applause, and after 3 songs, they booed and left the stage. The boos were from folk fans, some say. Some claim that the audience was dissatisfied with the sound in the short set, while others are upset that Dylan had brought an electric guitar. The folk were shocked by Dylan's performance in Newport. Music establishment. Ewan McCall's critical comments in Singing Out A magazine. In order to record the song, Positively 4th Street, Dylan promptly returned to the studio following the festival. Treating his previous folk music associates with themes of suspicion and revenge. In July 1965, on the U.S. chart, Dylan's single, Like a Rolling Stone, peaked at number 2. In 2004 and 2011, Rolling Stone named it the greatest song of all time. Springsteen bruised the impact of the song, which was the opening track on Dylan's Highway 61, impressed me. The majority of the songs on the revised album were influenced by organ riffs and blues guitar. A mix of famous characters, Desolation Row, was an exception. Poet Philip Larkin, the Highway 61 revisited album by Dylan, was enjoyable. A.L. Cooper gave Dylan 2 U.S. concerts. The group, which included Harvey Brooks, Robbie Robertson, and Leon Hem, was booed in the Forest Hills Tennis Stadium but received a better reception at the Hollywood Bowl. During his tours of Australia and Europe in April and May 1966, Dylan played 2 parts in each show. First half, solo with acoustic guitar and harmony. Second half, electrically amplified in the second, he was accompanied by music with the Hawks. The contract upset and booed a lot of fans. A few shows on May 17, 1966, the tour came to a close in a confrontation at the Manchester Free Trade Hall. The Bootleg Series volume, a recording of this event, was published in 1998. 4. In 1966, Bob Dylan was live. "Judas!" was yelled by an audience member throughout the concert. In response to Dylan's switching to electronic music, Dylan called the individual a liar and instructed his band to play loud music before performing. Like a Rolling Stone, Bob Dylan was observed as exhausted and appearing to be on a self-destructive trip on his 1966 tour. Path, D.A. Pennebaker, documentary filmmaker, mentioned that Dylan was using drugs to remain alerted. During an interview in 1969, Dylan acknowledged that he had been traveling for over 5 years. Drugs are being used to meet demands. Dylan had an absolutely incredible career. However, his personal life had a significant impact on this aspect. Dylan's romantic life and relationships. Bob's relationships have had a significant impact on his professional trajectory, which have contributed significantly to his overall success. Additionally, Bob Dylan's throughout world history, romantic life has been described as one of the most intricate and complex. During the early stages of his musical career, he had a significant relationship with Suze Rurolo. A moment when Dylan and Ralph first met as he was starting his musical career. Suze Rurolo, Dylan's early 1960s girlfriend who made a common appearance by his side of the freewheelin' B.O.B. Dylan, who died on February 25, 2011 after a protracted battle with illness. Their relationship started in 1929. Ruto, who was just 17 years old, provided ideas for many of Dylan's first romantic compositions after he moved to New York City in 1961. At the start of 1962, their shared home on West 4th Street was a humble abode. The place where they lived together was mentioned by Dylan in his autobiography, Chronicles, Volume 1, which was published. When they first met backstage at a concert in 2004, that Ruto immediately captured him, assisting A.S. Amuse for a few of his informal love ballads, such as Tomorrow Is a Don't Think Twice It's All Right, Boots of Spanish Leather, and Long Time. The main elements that influenced Dylan's political awakening were his encounters with her congressional parties, leftist political views, and her work with the Congress of Racial Equality. His early love songs are often connected with this relationship. Songs like Don't Think Twice, It's All Right were written during this time. The cover of Bob Dylan's album, The Freewheeling Bob Dylan, is a notable example of this era, which shows them walking hand in hand. Their romantic relationship began when ended in late 1963 because of the strain caused by Dylan's growing fame and the pressures it brought on their connection and ultimately resulted in their choice to split up. Ruth stayed in New York City after the breakup. She was an active member of the New York City Youth League in the 1960s and wanted to become a teacher. painting and book illustration, she released a memoir in 2009 with the title, A Freewheel in Time, which was set in the 1960s and centered on Greenwich Village. Dylan's high school friend Echo Hellstrom introduced him to a variety of singers and folk music resources, sharing his love of music. There is a theory that one possible influence on Dylan's song, Girl from the North Country, is Echo Hellstrom. However, this remains controversial and unsubstantiated. Additionally, Bob Dylan had a powerful romantic and musical collaboration with Joan Baez, who was then Queen of Folk. Their relationship, it started in 1961 and ended in 1965, with Dylan thought to have terminated it because of his shift. Baez felt left behind when they listened to electronic music, yet they persisted and maintained close friendships during their time together by working together both on stage and in the studio. It is hypothesized that Dylan might not have made the switch to electronic music if it weren't for Joan Baez. Additionally, Baez might not have had the successful career she does now without Dylan. Apologized for his regrettable behavior during their relationship and expressed regret for his actions. However, this apology was not made public until 2009. In keeping with the premiere of the public broadcast documentary, Joan Baez, How Sweet the Sound. The cooperative relationship between Dylan and Joan Baez began in the early 1960s. In 1963, they gave one of their first joint performances at the Newport Folk Festival. In conformity with Despite the documentary, Don't Look Back, their romantic involvement had started to wane by 1965. As a result, they kept working together on a number of musical projects over the years. Dylan and Baez were blessed with 4 children during their time together: Jesse, Anna, Samuel, and Jacob. Moreover, Sarah, Baez's prior marriage daughter,